Hello and welcome to this FPL Biggest Bargains video with me, Holly Shand. In today's video, I'm going to pick out 8 players that I think have been seriously underpriced in FPL and can provide us with massive value going into our game week 1 squads. All the data in this video is taken from the OptaStats tool over on Fantasy Football Hub. You can get that as a member and you can get 50% off right now by using the link in the description to this video and take advantage of the Win Your Mini League or Your Money Back offer. Let's get into it. The first player that I've picked out then is Manchester United's Bruno Fernandes. If you've watched my content for a few years, you'll know I've been a huge fan of him ever since he arrived in the Premier League, and I think FPL have made a massive mistake pricing him at just 8.5 million. We have to bear in mind he is the player who in 2020-21 was the highest scoring player in FPL, and even though Manchester United's long-term fixtures are perhaps a little bit tricky, over the first 3 game weeks, they actually sit second on the fixture ticker with fixtures at home to Wolves and Nottingham Forest, which is really going to benefit Bruno Fernandes. Now, last season wasn't his best season by any means in the Premier League, but he did really underperform, or his teammates underperformed around him. He hit the woodwork 5 times, which was the most of any player. And if you have a look at his expected assist data, he had an XA of 18.05, only converted that to 9 assists because of his teammates' poor finishing. So if the rest of the team improve around him, then he's got massive potential for points, because his expected points last season was 205 points, but he only actually scored 176 points. Now, there's a few other things that I like about Fernandes. First of all, he pretty much plays every single game. He's never injured. He always manages to just get out there and play pretty much 38 games a season. We also need to bear in mind that he's on penalties. Now, this is another way where he underperformed last season, because Manchester United were only awarded 3 penalties, which is, you know, quite a lot lower than a lot of the teams in the Premier League. And certainly, traditionally, Manchester United are a team that do get a lot of penalties. Certainly, in his first season and a half at Manchester United, he was a player that was averaging an attacking return a game. He's got plenty of routes to points with both goals and assists, and some fantastic underlying numbers from last season as well. He was top for key passes among all players last season with 119, and also top for big chances created with 32. The second player that I've picked out is Brighton's Estupiñán, who comes in at 5 million and a defender once more. Brighton sits second on the fixture ticker for their fixture ease over the first 6 game weeks of the season, which makes him an exciting prospect. And Brighton are a team in Europe now, so I think that benefits them in terms of having an easier schedule over the first 4 game weeks, because they've not got any midweek games in that period, which helps them. They kept 12 clean sheets last season, which puts them 6th of any team. And the thing that Estupiñán gives you is the potential for attacking returns. He was 4th for goal involvement among all defenders last season with 8, and he certainly prevailed in a switch to the system under De Zerbi, particularly over the last 10 game weeks of last season, where he had 3 big chances on goal, and he also created a further 3 big chances for his teammates. And among defenders, he sits 3rd for key passes last season with 52. Sticking with Brighton then, and I've also picked out midfielder Kaoru Mitoma. He comes in at 6.5 million, which is a 1.5 million price increase from last season, but I was expecting it to be more. I guess he kind of underperformed a little bit on points last season, purely because he wasn't a mainstay of the Brighton side until he really got established under De Zerbi just before the World Cup break. But he managed 7 goals and 9 assists last season from 2,311 minutes. So if we can scale that up and he gets closer to 3,000 minutes, then, you know, he really could excel in FPL. And we have to bear in mind that with those early fixtures, they are looking really promising for Brighton. And Mitoma's a player that's rarely rotated. The underlying numbers can be a bit patchy for Mitoma. I class him as a stat buster who kind of plods along. The underlying numbers don't look devastating, but he can pick up an attack and return when you least expect it. So I'm not going to be quoting loads of great underlying numbers, but the thing that really impressed me under the last 10 game weeks of last season was that he had 9 big chances on goal, an XG of 4.36, but just 1 goal in there. So he did underperform in that final period of the campaign. But we also need to think that he had 20 key passes in the same period as well. So it just shows you his ability to pick up both goals and assists. Moving back into defence then, and another player that's caught my eye is Newcastle United's Sven Botman, who comes in at 4.5 million. It's the same price as last season. I was expecting a hike though, because Newcastle United have now established themselves as a team that's a top 4 team, and they were second for clean sheets last season with 14. I guess the only thing that's really going to put us off Botman is his tricky opening fixtures, particularly Manchester City in game week 2 and Liverpool in game week 3. However, at this price point, you can rotate him, and there's a number of really strong defensive rotations that you can have with Botman. You can pair him in a rotation with a Brighton defender like a Stupinan, or a Brentford defender like Rico Henry, who's 4.5 million, or a Villa defender like Tyrone Mings at 4.5 million. Playing for the easier fixtures, so you'd like to start in game week 1 against Aston Villa at home, maybe game week 5 against Brentford at home, and then game week 6, game week 7, they play Sheffield United away and Burnley at home. So getting all that utility from Botman and maybe benching him on the tougher fixtures is the way to go. But at 4.5 million, he's fine to have as maybe your 3rd or 4th defender and have on your bench for some weeks. But we have to bear in mind we've got that massive clean sheet potential. He also carries a little bit of attacking threat. Obviously, he's a centre-back, so he's not going to carry bags and bags of attacking threat. But, you know, he does go up there for corners. He is used more of a decoy with Fabian Schär and Dan Burn being the big targets for Newcastle United. But we have to look at things like he got 2 assists last season, he had 3 big chances on goal himself, and he's an ever-present in this Newcastle United side. Now, Newcastle United did seem to underperform in terms of their clean sheet potential over the final 10 game weeks of last season, keeping 3, but we do need to look at the underlying numbers in that data as well. They were 3rd best in terms of big chances conceded on their goal, with just 15 chances conceded in those final 10 game weeks, which shows that, you know, there's huge potential there for even more clean sheets going into the next campaign. And as a team involved in Europe, they won't have any midweek fixtures until after the international break in game week 5. Moving back into midfield then, and another player I've picked out is Son Heung-min, who has had a 3 million price drop to 9 million. Now that seems pretty stark. Now we have to remember he's a former Golden Boot winner. At the end of the 2021-22 season, he finished on 258 points in FPL with 33 attacking returns. Obviously, he massively underperformed last season, as did Spurs as a whole, but they have got a new manager coming in for this campaign. I guess we can't really invest in him and fully commit on Spurs until we know the future of Harry Kane. That's going to be a big deciding point in terms of how attractive Son is as an option. But when we look at the FPL pricing as a whole, it's really difficult to get a second premium in when we look at how kindly priced a lot of these midfielders are. So the compromise with maybe going with just a 1 premium with Haaland is that you could potentially cover Kane by having Son in your midfield instead. Now, one player that did decrease in price by 3 million last season was Marcus Rashford, and he made an absolute mockery of his price tag. So could Son be the one to do it this campaign? Now, Spurs' opening fixtures are tricky. They're definitely mid-table on the fixture ticker if you look over the first 3 game weeks or the first 6 game weeks. So maybe Son isn't one that we start with for game week 1, particularly if, you know, Kane's future is still up in the air with the transfer window being open. But Son will surely have his time in our FPL teams this season, and he is going to be a bargain when that time comes. Final defender on this list of 8 is Arsenal's Gabriel, who comes in at 5 million. Now, 5 million may seem expensive to you for a centre-back, but I think with his goal threat and Arsenal's clean sheet potential, there's certainly a lot of plus points for Gabriel. I was expecting him to go up in price. We saw Ben White rise to 5.5. I was pleased to see Gabriel still at 5. Many will be looking at Zinchenko as their Arsenal defender, preferring the fullback to the centre-back, but Zinchenko just doesn't offer that security of minutes. Lots of injuries, little things cropped up last season that kept him out of the team, whereas Gabriel is an ever-present. And he does have some goal threat. We've got to bear in mind that he scored 10 goals in his 3 seasons at Arsenal in the Premier League, and his underlying numbers are very good as well. He was 3rd for shots among defenders last season with 32, and he was also 2nd for expected goals among defenders with 3.44, and Arsenal's fixtures have to be a consideration as well. They're 3rd on the fixture ticker in terms of difficulty over the first 6 game weeks of the season, providing plenty of opportunity for clean sheet points. Now, the only forward on this list is Chelsea's Nkunku, who is priced at 7.5 million. In terms of my own squad for game week 1, it's highly unlikely that I'll go with him because I'm not keen on investing in players that are new to the Premier League. But you look at his pedigree in the Bundesliga, where he scored 16 goals last season. I think that was from about 25 appearances, which was enough to get him the Golden Boot. He scored 20 goals in the season before. If he can transform that form over to the Premier League, then he could make a mockery of his price tag. Chelsea are a bit of an unknown quantity under Pochettino, but they could be worth a risk from the start of the season. Obviously, tricky fixture at home to Liverpool in game week 1, but the 5th on the fixture ticker over the first 3 game weeks of the season. Make that into the first 6 game weeks of the season. They top the fixture ticker in terms of fixture ease. And, you know, a lot of managers are looking at a 3-5-2 formation. That's 7.5 million forward slot. He could fit the bill. That's why he's being so highly backed. He's currently the 3rd highest owned forward in the game, around 20%, behind obviously Haaland and Gabriel Jesus. Final player on the list then is Manchester City's Phil Foden, who's seen a 0.5 million price drop to 7.5 million. Now, obviously, minutes were a huge problem last season, but we have to bear in mind that if you look at points per 90 among Man City players last season, he was 2nd to just Haaland on 6.93 points per 90 minutes. And he was 3rd overall for fantasy points among Man City players last season, despite playing around 1,800 minutes out of a possible 3,400. City are 8th on the fixture ticker over the opening 3 game weeks. That moves up to 4th when we extend to the first 6 game weeks. A really nice set of fixtures for the treble winners. And we've got to bear in mind Haaland's ownership is already over 80%. Most people are going to own Haaland and captain Haaland in FPL every week. So if you want an advantage when Manchester City play, you need to have another City player in your side. And Foden could be the one. I feel like he could flourish on the right wing, particularly if Mahrez or Bilva were to leave. I think that would open up the door to more minutes for Foden. Obviously, he had issues in terms of fitness last season. If he's put that behind him and he's having a really strong pre-season, then he could be the one to invest in. He was also 3rd among all Man City players for attacking returns last season with 18. And we need to bear in mind once more, City are in Europe, no European midweek fixtures until after game week 5. So that should mean that we see a little bit less rotation in the opening game weeks of the season. He's certainly going to be one on the watch list when it comes to the Community Shield, which comes 1 week before game week 1. Let me know in the comments then who you've picked out as your biggest bargain for the season. Do you agree with the 8 that I've put forward here? And if you've enjoyed this one, help me get to 300 likes on this video and subscribe to the channel. As I mentioned at the top, all of the data in this video has come from the Fantasy Football Hub OptaStats tool, and you can get that with 50% off memberships right now for pre-season, and I've got this fantastic pre-season offer as well. T's and C's apply for this one, but they're basically saying win your mini league or they'll give you a refund for your membership. So it's a risk-free way to get some great fantasy tools for the upcoming season. I'll be back very soon with another video. Thanks for watching.